The first step in launching a new autism cure is simple. Find something common and blame it.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay?
In the 1950s and 60s, it was mothers. Psychologists claimed autism was caused by refrigerator parents, emotionally distant moms who supposedly froze their children into withdrawal. In the 1990s, it became vaccines. One fraudulent study debunked 100 times over managed to convince millions that routine immunizations were secretly rewiring children's brains. When vaccines fell out of fashion, the blame moved to gluten, then dairy, then Wi-Fi signals, then heavy metals in food. Pick an everyday object and attach guilt to it. In the latest announcement by Trump and RFK Jr., the cause for autism was attributed to Tylenol.
To meet the president's challenge, I ordered HHS to launch an unprecedented all-agency effort to identify all causes of autism, including toxic and pharmaceutical exposures.
A pain reliever used by over half of pregnant women globally. The claim that something as routine as treating a fever could secretly be altering fetal development. No new data, no causal evidence, just a correlation, elevated to accusation. This is how the pattern always begins. Because if you can convince people that an ordinary product is dangerous, you don't need proof. You just need to use that fear. And once the public is primed to doubt what they already use, step 2 becomes easy. Offer the better alternative. Once doubt is introduced, a cure narrative can't survive on fear alone. It must offer an exit, a promise of reversal. Historically, autism cures have always arrived in pairs with their accusations. When vaccines were blamed, chelation therapy emerged as a fix. Originally, a legitimate treatment for lead poisoning, repurposed into a detox ritual for children who had no lead to remove. Despite the little empirical support and significant medical risks, it spread rapidly through alternative clinics. When autism was framed as a neurological tuning problem, auditory integration training sold itself as the solution, flooding children with filtered music tapes to supposedly recalibrate their brains. Multiple controlled studies found no consistent therapeutic effect, yet families paid thousands for headphones and supervision. When autism was explained as sensory imbalances, sensory integration became the pathway to healing. Swings, brushing kits, weighted blankets, whatever the fuck. Though still widely used today, research consistently reports inconclusive and inconsistent outcomes in controlled trials. Then came hyperbaric oxygen chambers, marketed as brain oxygenation for developmental disorders. About $100 an hour for pressurized air sessions, based on sparse case studies until systematic reviews labeled the evidence weak and largely anecdotal. Even nutritional science had its supposed autism breakthrough in the 70s and 80s, through megavitamin therapy, especially high-dose vitamin B6 paired with magnesium. It was hailed as a biochemical correction for autism. Despite early claims of behavioral improvements, follow-up analyses criticized studies as methodologically weak and non-replicable. Yet supplement regimes persisted for decades and continue to persist. And this brings us to the present-day version of that same script. In the recent autism announcement, after implying that common medications like Tylenol may contribute to autism, despite no confirmed causal link, leucovorin, a folate-based drug historically used in cancer support therapy, was promoted as a breakthrough treatment. Officials positioned it as the first FDA-recognized treatment for autism and announced plans to expand Medicaid access. And I want to say that the drug itself is not illegitimate. For a narrow subset of individuals with autism with rare folate metabolism issues, preliminary trials have shown mild language improvements. But this is exactly how biomedical fads take shape. A therapy with limited conditional promise is presented as universally applicable. A tool for a few becomes a solution for all. And in that shift, from evidence-based nuance to mass-marketed cure, science stops guiding autism treatment, and salesmanship starts. What follows is always the same. Parents who are exhausted, underserved, and looking for anything that might help are told that this might be the one, the cure. And then they're told something else, that experts don't want you to know about it. Once the cure is proposed, there's only one obstacle left. Qualified experts telling people to slow down. And that's where step 3 comes in. You must convince the public that science is not just wrong, but actively suppressing the truth. And this tactic is not new. When megavitamin therapy began receiving criticisms in the 80s for inconsistent results, its proponents didn't revise their claims. They accused mainstream researchers of refusing to see improvements that parents could plainly observe. Auditory integration training wasn't just marketed as helpful. It was defended as something dismissed because autism experts were too rigid in their thinking. Even sensory integration, now absorbed in respectable practice, built its early momentum on the narrative that traditional approaches were too behaviorist, too clinical, too robotic, or lacking humanity. The implication was always the same. If you question it, you don't care about autistic children. Today, the rhetorical shield has been redeployed. In the recent autism announcement, officials implied that mainstream science had ignored folate research for far too long, and that bureaucratic agencies had failed autistic families by refusing to explore innovative approaches like leucovorin. RFK Jr. went one step further, suggesting that groups who avoid vaccines and pills have no autism, a statement designed not to inform, but to imply that scientists already know the truth and are hiding it. The framing is deliberate. Science is not portrayed as incomplete, it's portrayed as corrupted. And if the science is corrupted, then parents are justified in abandoning it. This is where tragedy enters the picture. Because once people believe that experts are gatekeepers rather than guides, anything can be sold to them under the label of freedom. And that's how hopeful families end up spending thousands of dollars on unproven treatments. Which leads us to step 4, profit, collapse, and rebrand. Once a supposed cure gains momentum, money begins to crystallize around it. And at that point, it no longer matters whether it works, only if it sells. Chelation therapy is a textbook example. Father and son team Mark and David Guerre opened clinics across the United States offering chelation and even chemical castration drugs under the guise of testosterone reduction therapy. They claimed dramatic recoveries. Regulators later found fabricated diagnoses and dangerous protocols. The treatment collapsed legally, but not before it had become an industry. Megavitamin therapy followed a similar path. Psychologist Bernard Rimland became one of the earliest megavitamin evangelists. He promoted vitamin B6 and magnesium supplements aggressively, co-founding Defeat Autism Now, or DAN, a movement that sold autism-based biomedical protocols directly to parents. Studies questioning efficacy were dismissed as biased, and supplement sales continued regardless. Facilitated communication may be the most devastating case of profit entangled with hope. Marketed as a way for nonverbal autistic individuals to communicate through a facilitator guiding their hand, it was adopted rapidly in schools and therapy centers in the 1990s. Training courses, certification programs, and consulting networks flourished, but controlled studies consistently showed that messages came from the facilitators themselves, not from the autistic individuals. When tested blind, users could not answer basic questions unless the facilitator knew the answer. Parents weren't just misled. They were made to believe that their children were speaking to them, only to have that hope ripped away from them. Imagine your child says, "I love you" for the first time, and then you find out it was all a lie. Absolutely heartbreaking stuff. Yet even today, facilitated communication survives under new labels, like rapid prompting method or RPM, and spelling to communicate, or letterboarding with the fucking telepathy tapes. The brand changes, but the mechanism stays the same. And now, leucovorin stands on the edge of that same transition, from therapy to market. After the recent autism announcement, federal officials proposed expanding Medicaid coverage for leucovorin as a treatment. Early reporting noted that investors were already exploring proprietary high-dose folate formulations positioned specifically for autism treatment, moving quickly before regulatory scrutiny caught up. Meanwhile, prenatal supplement brands quickly seized on the Tylenol panic. Several wellness blogs began promoting acetaminophen-free pregnancy kits and neurosafe prenatal detox stacks, priced higher than the standard vitamins, all without a shred of causal evidence connecting Tylenol to autism. Not all autism cures operate in plain sight though. Some live in the shadows but profit just the same. One of the most disturbing examples is MMS, or Miracle Mineral Solution, a concoction of industrial bleach promoted as a detoxifier for autism. It's typically administered orally or through enemas. Despite multiple FDA warnings and arrests of distributors, MMS continues to be sold in closed Facebook groups and Telegram channels, under euphemisms like chlorine dioxide therapy and parasite cleanse kits. The marketing is always the same. Science is hiding this. Doctors won't tell you. Parents must take healing into their own hands. Families are not acting irrationally. They're acting within a belief structure they were sold. that suppression is proof of the truth, and wherever that mindset takes root, regulation becomes irrelevant. This is not conspiracy, it's commerce. Autism cures do not need to be proven to be profitable, they only need to be promising. And once public doubt is established and an alternative is offered, the revenue cycle begins. When the science eventually catches up and disproves the claims, the cure rarely dies. It's renamed, reframed, and rebranded, which leads to the final step. Step 5. Repeat with a new label. The most disturbing part of the cycle isn't that pseudoscience exists, it's that it keeps working. Not because parents are gullible, not because autistic people are broken, but because support is scarce, services are expensive, insurance is hostile, and systems are slow. When real help is hard to access, fake help doesn't just look tempting, it looks like the only option. And the cost of chasing it is not theoretical. Some autistic people, especially those who require 24-hour support, live with relentless self-injury, aggression, insomnia, or medical complications that most people never see. Headbanging to the point of detaching retinas, biting chunks of skin off of arms, screaming through the night, running into traffic. Parents pull dressers over windows so their child won't escape at 3 a.m. They sleep in shifts. Some don't even sleep at all. But this isn't just about those at the high support levels. Even parents of verbal, academically capable autistic children are left fighting schools, battling insurers, and navigating systems built to deny rather than to deliver. When someone is living at that level of pressure, they will try anything. And this is why anyone who weaponizes that kind of pain for profit deserves open condemnation. Whether it's a politician selling vitamins at a podium, or a wellness influencer selling detox kits on Instagram, or a so-called therapist charging $200 an hour to facilitate communication by guiding a child's hand. It's the same violation of taking advantage of desperate people. Facilitated communication is one of the clearest examples. Families were convinced their nonverbal autistic children were finally speaking through assisted typing. They cried, they reconnected, and they believed. Then controlled studies revealed the truth. The messages were coming from the facilitators, not the autistic individuals. That is not just scientific invalidation. That is emotional devastation, and it makes scientists out to be the bad guy. Imagine having to tell a family that their child didn't tell them I love you. Instead of disappearing, facilitated communication simply rebranded. Same claims, new label. And facilitated communication is not alone in its resurrection. Chelation didn't vanish when regulators shut it down. It just reappeared as detox protocols and parasite purge cleanses. Because apparently, everything from autism to anxiety can now be cured with lemon water and unregulated supplements. Weighted vests, once vaguely justified as sensory tools, are now repackaged for everyone as compression technology, as if anxiety can be crushed into submission. Dolphin therapy, which used to be marketed as emotional bonding through swimming with marine animals, now survives as co-regulation excursions, otherwise known as $3,000 to pet a wet animal while someone films it for Instagram. Which brings us back to leucovorin. Leucovorin is not necessarily a scam. It may help a small group of autistic people with specific folate transport issues, and that makes it valuable, cautiously and conditionally valuable. But history tells us what happens when conditional science is marketed as a universal cure. A potentially useful treatment becomes another miracle, another protocol, another talking point instead of a clinical tool. This is how therapies die, not from failure, but from overreach, which is exactly what will happen to leucovorin, Tylenol panic, or whatever comes next, unless this cycle is finally recognized for what it is, a business model. And there are people that are breaking that model. Not in press conferences, not in wellness seminars, but in clinics, labs, classrooms, and respite centers. Behavior analysts are reducing self-injury one data point at a time. Speech therapists building communication slowly, not theatrically. Neurologists publishing boring but honest results. Direct support workers showing up every morning at houses or schools. Parents who never go viral because real care isn't cinematic. They're not selling miracle cures, they're fighting for incremental, measurable good. Autism does not need another historic announcement or another historic cure. It needs funded services, rigorous research, respite care, communication access, and evidence that doesn't collapse under pressure. Hope is not the enemy here, but exploitation is. And the only way out of this cure cycle is to finally say, we will take progress over promises, science over salesmanship, and dignity over spectacle. If that sounds less exciting than a miracle cure, good. Real progress should bore you. The next time you hear the words breakthrough, cure, or they don't want you to know, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. Who benefits if I believe this? What happens if I'm wrong? And has this new cure already failed once under another name? Because chances are, it has. Whoever promises the next autism breakthrough won't be the last. This cycle will come back wearing a new lab coat, a new suit, a new buzzword, a new must-watch press conference. But that's fine, because the answer was never going to come from the headlines anyway. It's being built slowly, quietly, and by people who don't use slogans. Just hard work, data, and integrity. So here's how we move forward. Question the spectacle, trust the boring, and protect the vulnerable. And when the next historic cure hits your feed, don't ask, could it be true? Instead, ask, who does this serve? Let them keep selling miracles, because there are people working hard to build systems of support every single day. Alrighty, thanks for hanging in the muck hole. Catch y'all later.